been a fan of ACT for quite some time, and I formed my own nonprofit many, many years ago, but I tell artists all the time, if I had to do it all over again, I would just go through ACT. Why reinvent the wheel? But it is great to be here and to share with you a little bit of my own story. I was one of those kids, I really resonated with some of the things you were saying, Lang, because I was one of those kids that felt as a child, as a teenager, called to ministry. But I didn't feel like I fit the mold of the missionary. It didn't feel like I fit the mold of the pastor. But it did feel very much like God was calling me into full-time ministry. But I discovered theater as a kid, and I just loved performing, and I began to blossom. But I didn't quite know how to put those pieces together. But then a little later in life, God began to show me a way and open up doors, and I ended up touring with a theater company for about 10 years that was also a ministry. And then in 1984, began my own ministry of doing Master's Image Productions, where I do one-man shows. And been doing that ever since, and truly, truly feel very blessed that I can do what I love to do and serve the Lord in a calling at the same time. And so I know that resonates probably with a lot of you in this room. How many of you are involved in sponsoring a child? You have a picture on your refrigerator of some child that you sponsor. Thank you for what you're doing. You know, an independent study was done not too long ago to say, does this child sponsorship thing really work? Does it really make a difference? And I know you work with Tom Jackson, and you've heard all about this. And Tom is who introduced me to child sponsorship as well. Some of you may know that name. But independent study was done to say, does this child sponsorship thing really work? Does it really make a difference? And I think it was done through Compassion. I know that that's another organization that's represented here in this room. And that study came back with a resounding yes. It really does make a difference. And so I am privileged through my ministry to offer child sponsorship in addition to my main thing. And I want to talk a little bit more about your main thing and how that ties in with sponsorship in a few minutes here. But I've worked with child sponsorship for about 16 years now. And I got to tell you, it is one of the most significant additions to my ministry, and I can't imagine not doing it now. It has really made an impact on my ministry far beyond what I ever would have dreamed in the beginning. Food for the Hungry is the organization that I'm working with right now. Anybody here work with food, our sponsor through Food with the Hungry? Some of you do. That's great. Thank you for doing that as well. But I want to read a scripture to you, James 1:27. Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. The last half of that is an ongoing challenge, isn't it? Especially in our world today. How do we keep ourselves from being polluted by this world? That's a full-time struggle for me, I know. But the first half of that, looking after orphans and widows in their distress, there is a way that all of us can do that. And I don't think, from my own perspective, I've come to the understanding it's not an option. It's something that God calls us to do. And I'm asking you today to consider, how are you doing that? And one of the main objections that I get from artists all along when I talk about possibly doing this is, well, that's not my main thing. My emphasis is on family. My emphasis is on discipleship. My emphasis is on recovery ministries. That's great. My emphasis is not, my emphasis of my ministry is not about helping the poor. But I think it's become an important part of my ministry and something that we are all called to do as well. You know, a number of years ago, I used to do a program on drug and alcohol abuse. I did one-man shows and did school assemblies. It wasn't a good fit for me, to be honest. That's not where God, I was experimenting with some things, but really felt that was a detour that I didn't really need to take. But at that particular time, there was a man on my board of directors who was an accountant for a burger chain called Bob's Burgers in Salem, Oregon. And he convinced me that he was going to present it to his board to see or to his business, if they could fund my going into schools. The catch would be that every performance I'd have to give up and give a little bit of a commercial for Bob's Burgers. And I thought, this feels a little weird. Here I am talking about substance abuse, and I'm going to be pushing fast food. And I thought, but they're going to pay me to do this. So, I was just mercenary enough to say, I'll make it work. I'll find a way to make it work, That never came to be, but I learned something about myself in that process, that I was eager to do it because of the money involved. And that brings me to the case that I think all of us deal with, is that delicate balance between ministry and business. Yes, it's ministry. We're called to this. God's guiding us and leading us along the way. But we also have to use a little bit of business sense along the way, too. And I know that all of us as artists struggle with funding. And Food for the Hungry has been a major component in solving that for me. How much better that I can promote something that I truly believe in, helping the poor, rather than burgers. And so I've really appreciated what Food for Hungry has offered along that line. To be a partner with Food for the Hungry, it's a very simple process. It really is amazing to me for the amount of time that I have to commit to that, the compensation I get in return for it. I have to agree to give them a few minutes of my stage time. So at the end of each of my performances, I just take 3 to 5 minutes to share a little bit, show a short video like that, and share a little bit about sponsoring children and invite people to my table to sponsor a child. I meet the people at the table that are interested in sponsoring, sign them up to become sponsors. I send in a short one-page report that is done through a FedEx envelope that they provide for me. I don't have to pay for it or anything. Send that in, and within a couple of weeks, I get paid. Starting payment for sponsorship with Food for the Hungry, they pay you approximately $75 a child to begin with, and that can go up the longer you're with it and the better you get at getting kids sponsored. In my career with sponsorship, I've gotten over 6,000 kids sponsored. Do the math, okay? Remembering the poor, the orphans and the widows. I'm doing what I think God has called me to do, but it also has made great business sense for me. It's been a way that I can fund my ministry and keep going and doing what I'm doing. One of the other things that will likely happen when you become a partner with FH is they'll send you on a trip to go to the field to see their work up close and personal. And they have just started doing kind of what we're doing here. They've started holding artist retreats. And I really feel that that's an important part. I love coming, even though I'm not part of ACT, I love coming to this just because I get to hang out with other artists. And so to have that also a community of artists that I can connect with there has been very helpful. Don't do it right now. I know we have internet here, but later on today, go onto the fh.org website, and I want you to navigate to how you can get involved. There's a link there to the artist page, and you will see that you're in some very good company. There are some very high-name, very well-known artists, as well as a number of independent guys like myself. There are bloggers, there are authors and speakers that are doing this. And I want you to become a part of that family and to find a way to make it work. Now, back to the main thing question. The biggest objection that I hear from people when I talk to artists is, like I said before, that's not my main thing. And I want to challenge you to consider how it can become, well, it doesn't have to be your main thing, become something that you do. And I think we have a great example for that in Scripture as well. In Galatians chapter 2, starting with verse 1, I'm not going to read the whole passage, I'm going to skip around a little bit, but Paul had this issue with his main thing, I guess you could say. Then after 14 years, he went again to Jerusalem, this time with Barnabas. I took Titus along also. I went in response to a revelation and meeting privately with those esteemed as leaders. And this would be Peter and some of the other apostles. I presented to them the gospel that I had been preaching to the Gentiles. I wanted to be sure I was not running and had not been running my race in vain. Don't all of us want that kind of confirmation? We want to know that we're running the true race. On the contrary, they recognized that I had been entrusted with the task of preaching the gospel. They gave me and Barnabas the right hand of fellowship when they recognized the grace given to me. They agreed that we should go to the Gentiles. All they asked was that we should continue to remember the poor, the very thing that I had been eager to do. When I think about Paul, when I think about the early apostles, I don't think, the first thing that doesn't come to my mind is they were remembering the poor. But here, that was given to them as a priority, to remember the poor as you go. And I want to encourage you and challenge you to do that as well. So I'm here partially representing Food for the Hungry this weekend, and I've got, if you don't sponsor a child, I'd be very happy to help you do that. I've got some children with me over there that need sponsorship as well. But I also would like to take information from you, just if you're interested in possibly becoming an artist with Food for the Hungry. I've got a little little one-page form I need you to fill out with some contact information, and let's start a dialogue and see how we might make that happen. To me, I have to say, in early years of my ministry, I would measure my success about, well, did I get a good round of applause? Did I get a good offering? And I would use those as little markers. Hey, I was effective. Something happened here, or there was a great testimony, and somebody told me how the play that I did had touched their lives. And all those things still factor in, of course. But today, one of the things that I mark a successful time of ministry is how many kids do I get sponsored. That's one of the most things I look forward to more than anything else is afterwards. It really impacts me to know that I can do my thing, I can do my main thing, I can perform, and perhaps the play that I'm performing, the story that I'm telling will touch a heart in my audience, but at the same time, 10 kids all over the world got their lives changed, giving my ministry a global impact as well as a local impact every single time I go out and perform. So I want to challenge you, encourage you to be a part of that. I want to close with one other piece of scripture. And for this, I'm going to use the words of Eugene Peterson from his translation, or paraphrase, I should say, of the scripture in contemporary language called The Message. When he finally arrives, blazing in all of his beauty and all of the angels with him, the Son of Man will take his place on his glorious throne. And all the nations will be arranged before him, and he will begin to sort out the people, much in the way a shepherd sorts out sheep from goats, putting the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. And then he will turn to those on his right and say, "Enter, you who've been blessed by my Father, take what is coming to you in this kingdom. It has been prepared for you since the earth's foundation. And here is why. I was hungry. You gave me food. I was thirsty. You gave me drink. I was homeless. You gave me a room. I was shivering. You gave me clothes. I was sick. You stopped to visit me. I was in prison, and you came to me." And then those sheep will say, "Master, what are you talking about? When did we ever see you hungry and give you food, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we ever see you sick or in prison and come to you?" And the king will say, "I'm telling you the honest truth. Whenever you did one of those things to someone who was overlooked or ignored, that was me. You did it to me." And then he will turn to those goats on his left and say, "Get out, worthless goats. You are good for nothing but the fires of hell. And here is why. I was hungry. You gave me no food. I was thirsty. You gave me no drink. I was homeless. You gave me no bread. I was shivering. You gave me no clothes. I was sick and in prison, and you did not come to me." And then those goats will say, "Master, what are you talking about? When did we ever see you hungry or thirsty or homeless or shivering or sick or in prison and not help you?" And the king will say, "I'm telling you the honest truth. Whenever you failed to do one of those things to someone who was overlooked or ignored, that was me. You failed